JK Master BMS shows an alarm. The slave doesn't. Well, there's no alarm here on the website in the VRM, and there's also no alarm here. But it tells me I've got two batteries, but one of them is blocking charging. Guys, welcome back to another video here from the Off-Kit Garage in my red t-shirt in sunny, hot Australia. Look at this weather again. We've got a bit of wind today. Cold wind because it's winter still. Look at this, 22 amps outside still. And it is after 3 p.m. already. 43% state of charge. Yeah, the power of the sun is back. It's only a couple of weeks until we do the first full charge after the winter. And I'm very looking forward to that. Okay, my friends, as you have seen, I've got my red t-shirt already on. And today we want to have a look and talk about the many problems the JK inverter BMS has. All these batteries here containing the JK inverter BMS. And this morning I have tested the version 14 of the JK inverter BMS and now just the version 15 of the JK inverter BMS, and I've got the same issue. All the BMSs are running the latest firmware version respectively, and this, what I'm going to show you right now, is only one of the many issues the JK inverter BMS has. I have a long list of complaints on my mobile phone from all the emails you have sent, from all the comments I read under my videos. It is insane. And I want to show you only one of these issues here, because otherwise it would be a very long video. Okay, let me walk you through the setup here. I've got these two JK inverter BMSs here connected with a network cable. The top one is the master, bottom one is the slave. Yeah, they are not electrically connected, doesn't matter, we just want to have the communication up and running and change some parameters to trigger some alarms in these BMSs. And because these two batteries are not connected to anything at the moment, we don't see any current flowing into these batteries. Even the solar charge controller thinks it is charging the batteries, but this power is actually going into the battery shelf at the moment. Man, it's winter, I'm desperate after every amp. So I use the pool fence solar to charge the battery shelf as well. So that's why you don't see any current flowing here, but it doesn't matter for this test. So here in the Victron VRM, the JK inverter BMS shows up, and we go into the details of this BMS, and we can see the highest and lowest cell voltage, but we still don't know which battery actually that is in. We only know there is a cell number 7 somewhere in one of these batteries, and this is the lowest cell, but we don't know in which battery it is. It also shows correctly we have two batteries online, a master and a slave, and none of them is actually blocking charging or discharging at the moment. So everything is fine at the moment. And if we have a look at the parameters of this BMS, well, of the two BMSs combined, we can see we've got a charge current limit of 190 amps and a discharge current limit of 190 amps as well. And this is because here in the settings we have set a continued charge current of 100 amps and a continued discharge current of 100 amps as well. And the software takes 5% away of this amount you have set in the application, in the app. So from 100 amp, 5% will be 5 amps. And this reduced amount of current will be reported to your inverter or to the Victron system. Let's make the battery cold. So I'm now logged into the master BMS, and what we want to do is now, because all the battery temperatures are around 17 degrees at the moment. So if I go in here and set the charge under temperature protection, which is usually on 0 degrees, if I set this one here to say 18 degrees, yeah, and the recovery to say 20 degrees. So 20, 18. This will obviously now trigger an under voltage and under temperature protection for this one BMS, right? As you can see here, protection, charge under temperature, because all the cells are under 18 degrees, what I have just said. And here in the Victron remote console, we can also see we've got still both batteries online, but one of them is blocking charge. And if we go back here and go into the parameters, we can also see our charge current limit, CCL, has now reduced to 95 amps only. Yeah, before it was 190. Both BMSs could take the 100 amp set in the parameters, But now, because one has an under temperature alarm or protection, it reduces the available charge current to 95 amps now. And it tells the inverter you can maximum charge with 95 amps because one of the batteries has a protection and the BMS is disabling charging. So the communication from this perspective works absolutely flawlessly, yeah? No problem at all. So if we go into alarms, we can see okay. There's a low temperature, okay. And here's also a low temperature, low charge temperature, is it called? It says okay. So the BMS is not reporting this under temperature protection or alarm to the Victron system. And we can see here, there's no alarm and this charge controller is still charging. There's an alarm for the master, but there's no alarm for the slave, which is absolutely 100% correct. Only one battery has an under temperature alarm or protection at the moment. So only this specific battery shows that. So at the moment, master and slave. What happens if we have only one battery? Yeah. So to demonstrate this, I just disconnect the communication cable to the slave and we have only the master connected to our Victron system, to the inverter. We still got the alarm running. And there you can hear it. The Servo GX, which is connected via CAN to this BMS, has an alarm. We can see here's an alarm coming up in the Victron remote console. We can also go to the website and we can see there are 2 active alarms for the JK inverter BMS low battery temperature alarm. How good is that? In this case, if you have only one battery, obviously the solar charge controller or your inverter will stop charging from solar. Yeah. Before we had just 500 and something watts, now we've got 0. So if we have a look in the remote console and confirm this alarm here, so it stops beeping, we can see we've got a charge current limit now of 0 amps because there's only one battery and this battery has an issue, over voltage, over current, over temperature, under temperature. Regardless what it is, it will set your charge current limit to 0 or your discharge current limit respectively. And we go into details. We can see we've got one battery and one battery is actually blocking charging. I still can discharge this battery, of course, there's no issue. And if we have a look here in the alarm settings, we can see we've got a low temperature alarm and we've got a low charge temperature alarm as well. This is just how the BMS reports this to the Victron system, and hence we have 2 alarms here in the Victron VRM, but it's only an under temperature protection. So this all works fine if there's only one battery connected. If you have more than one, it doesn't work anymore. At least it doesn't tell you there's an alarm. Well, now you could argue, Andy, you have just shown us that it still reduces the charge current into this group of batteries if you have more than one in parallel. Yeah, I just connect the battery again. Okay, master and slave are connected again. And boom, immediately we still allow 95 amps into this group of battery. The master is still on alarm, but here alarm disappears. And you can also see the solar charge controller kicks back in, it starts charging. Because the other battery, the slave, can still take the energy. So from a pure security perspective, this is all good. Yeah, there's nothing wrong how this system works, and this is actually how it's supposed to work. But for the sake of reporting, for the sake of making you as the user, as the operator of this battery aware that there is a problem, well, you will never find out unless you look at the front panels of your batteries and you see a red light. No, it's not flashing, it's permanently on. It's a red light on one of your batteries. So it gives you an indication, hey, with this battery there's something wrong. But your system still keeps running. It charges, it discharges, just at a reduced rate. And let me tell you something about the battery shelf here in this regard, because I had exactly this same problem with the JBD, the overkill BMS here in the top battery shelf. I always had an over temperature protection in summertime with this top battery here. And the BMS turned off this battery. The bottom and the middle battery were still running. We could still charge and discharge these 2 batteries, but the top one didn't play the game, disconnected, over temperature. And since I installed the battery shelf here, I never knew about this. I only found out when I installed the Peter boards in the battery shelf. Because then, obviously, we had a CAN communication between all three BMSs back to the inverter, back to the Victron system. And then we had an alarm. Of course, the alarm came when I was away from home. And I could see the alarm in the Victron system. And I said, shit, there's an over-temperature problem. Is the garage maybe burning or so? And this was mainly only due because I have one of the temperature sensors of this BMS in the back of this breaker. And in summertime I can have up to 300 amps outside. And the breaker got a bit warm. And at 45 degrees the BMS said, well, the battery is too hot. Which was actually not the battery, it was the breaker. You're not supposed to put these temperature sensors into a breaker, of course, but I do because I wanted to know how hot it gets in these circuit breakers. Well, now I know. Yeah, so anyway, there was this underlying temperature issue with the circuit breaker in summertime, and the battery turned off, turned on, turned off, turned on, and I didn't realize. Yeah, because the other two batteries were still working fine. The system was working fine, I got power, it was charging, I didn't know. Well, and this is exactly what you will experience with the JK inverter BMS as well. If there is any protection, any alarm over voltage, current, temperature, whatever, you won't know. There's no communication between these parallel batteries, and the master is not reporting this issue back to your inverter or to the Victron system. You just don't know. And, well, quite frankly, isn't that the main purpose of establishing a communication between the BMS and your inverter? To report these alarms back to the inverter. So the inverter should give an alarm with beeping or with a display message, some sort of message to the operator, to the user, making them aware, hey, there is something wrong, there is something not correct in one of your batteries. But at the moment, unless you see the red light in the front panel of one of your batteries, you wouldn't know. Yeah, clearly something wrong in the software. It works with one battery, but it doesn't work with multiple batteries in parallel. And yes, as I said initially, this is exactly the same with the version 14. Latest firmware 14.20 flashed onto these BMSs, and still the same issue. One battery works, two or more batteries don't work anymore. So, what else is going on in the world of the JK inverter BMS? Well, thanks to you, the community, reporting all these issues under my videos, I have made a list, and I quickly want to go through this list here just to give you an understanding how much work JK has to do to, to optimize this BMS, to finish their work, actually, yeah? So some of these issues are not really technical issues, they are more like feature requests, but they lead to issues, like the first one, import and export settings. Yeah, we have asked for this feature for quite a while now, and JK has never done it. If you have multiple of these JK inverter BMSs, it is a pain in the ass if you have to log into every single one with your mobile app and set the same parameters again and again and again. It would be so easy if you just set one BMS as you want it, export this into a file, and then import all these settings into the next BMS. They don't have it. Everyone else has got it? JK? No. So next one, this is the 100% state of charge trigger. So as you know, at the moment the BMS has a voltage which you can set in the BMS. When one of the cells of your whole battery reaches this voltage, it resets the BMS to 100%. This is not quite 100% correct because we are still not at 100% if one of your cells reaches 3.5 volts, for example, but it is already better than what we had before. But this exact feature causes some issues with some of the inverters out there. For example, the Voltronic inverter. As soon as this Voltronic inverter receives a 100% state of charge from the BMS, it stops charging. So with this inverter, you will have no absorption, you will have no float, and of course you will have no balancing. Because only one cell needs to reach this threshold and the inverter stops charging. Yeah, there's no waiting for all the other cells to catch up and the balancer doing some work. There's nothing. And here the idea is to get actually rid of this parameter in the settings and instead use the float voltage parameter for exactly triggering the BMS to 100%. That means we can reach the 3.45 volts, for example, go into the absorption voltage, let the balancer do its work, and once the timer has run out, which you can set in the BMS as well, it goes into float, which is a lower voltage setting. And once this is done, we have fully absorbed the battery at 3.45 volts, for example, and then the battery is 99.9% charged. So this is only a change in the software necessary to make this work. Next one. Yeah. The default charge under temperature protection. As per factory default, the under temperature protection is still at -20 degrees Celsius and the recovery at -10 degrees Celsius. This is obviously insane if you choose lithium iron phosphate or any other lithium battery. You cannot charge lithium under 0 degrees Celsius without damaging it. So this is a request for years almost, still not being fixed. Even they promised to put this on the list for the next version, but has never been fixed. They could just put the under temperature protection to 2 degrees Celsius and the recovery to 7 degrees Celsius and everything would be fine. It's a safe margin then. Victron remote console details not showing which battery is low and high. This is exactly what I've shown you in the example before. Yeah, we can see which cell is the lowest voltage cell, but we cannot see in which battery that is. So for some reason, this information is obviously not submitted by the BMS to the inverter or to the Victron system. So we don't know. There was the request for a heater manual and how-to guide. I think the specifications for the heater are stated on the AliExpress website. Yeah, but let me see if I've got a JK BMS with the heater function here, and I'll make a quick tutorial so you know how it works and what the specifications are. I think you can only connect heating pads with 3 amps to the BMS. BMS shows no alarm in Victron when 2 or more BMSs are connected. This is exactly what I have shown you before. Victron VRM, no consumption showing, data from BMS missing, question mark. I have shown you exactly this problem in one of the last videos. Basically you just need to go to the SPAT calibration center on the Victron VRM and you scroll down a bit until you see the graph and you will see only the solar charging but not the consumption. So there is data missing from the BMS, it doesn't report correctly to the Victron VRM and hence it doesn't show any consumption, so the graph is totally useless then. Well, the step-loss BMS does it, for example, so it must be possible, right? So then we have a lot of complaints under my videos about different brand inverters not working correctly with the JK BMS. I haven't gone into any specific examples here because there were so many different inverter brands mentioned, which I haven't even heard before. So I'm not even sure if the JK inverter BMS does work with these kind of inverters. But if you can select the pylon tag protocol in your inverter and set the JK inverter BMS also to pylon tag, they should communicate. And at least they should deliver a basic functionality and communication then. But yeah, apparently there are some issues with some specific inverters out there. Even more complaints about JK is not replying to customer inquiries and people asking for help, people wanted to know something and JK is just not replying. This is something I cannot understand. They have built a fantastic BMS. It has the perfect hardware and they're selling a shit ton of these BMSs now. Almost every do-it-yourself battery box out there is coming with a JK inverter BMS now. They are selling so many of them and their customer service is so bad. I personally cannot understand why this is and I certainly cannot do anything about it. But I'm 100% with you that this cannot be. They're providing contact details on the JK BMS website, email addresses, WhatsApp. And if customers send inquiries to this company, they need to get back to them. They cannot ignore them, they cannot just not respond to them anymore. So the customer service is a big issue for JK BMS. State of charge drift. Yes, this is something I have realized for a very long time, having 2 or 3 JK BMSs here in the battery shelf now. For 2.5, 3 years now, the state of charge drift is insane. If you are not calibrating, if you are not fully charging your battery on a frequent base, the state of charge calculation is totally out of control. And this was one of the main reasons to go with the Victron Smart Shunt here as the point of truth. I'm not looking at the state of charge of these individual BMSs in my battery shelf anymore. I use a central point of truth, which is the Victron Smart Shunt. This is not 100% accurate as well, but even after 3 months of winter not fully charging the battery shelf here, we will have a fairly reasonable good understanding of what the state of charge, of what the true state of charge of the battery shelf is. But if I look into the individual JK BMSs here, they sometimes claim the battery is at 80%, while the smart shunt says it is at 25%. There is a huge drift of state of charge if you cannot fully charge and calibrate your BMS frequently. And it is the same with the inverter BMS as well. If you just cycle your batteries between 20 and 60% during winter time, as I do, well, don't look at the state of charge, because it is all over the place then. So here, for example, these two batteries at the top here, this is the master, this is the slave. These two batteries have been connected in parallel electrically and via communication for 8 to 10 weeks, I would say. And I've only fully charged them once at the beginning, yeah, to top balance both and to set the BMS to 100% state of charge. And then I discharged them, and now they are probably at about 5 to 10% state of charge. The master shows 1% state of charge, while the slave shows 59% state of charge. I mean, come on, how is this possible? How can these two BMSs calculate so differently? It is the same BMS flashed with the same firmware 14.20, but state of charge is all over the place. Yeah, there needs to be more work done in terms of software and firmware upgrades to rectify this issue and make the state of charge calculation more precise. What else do I have here? Issues with large display not working at all or not showing the right information. Yes, this was an issue with the, apparently with older firmwares and the version 15 of the BMS. When you connect the 4.3, I haven't got one here, the 4.3 touchscreen display. And sometimes the display didn't work at all, or it just showed static information which were not changing anymore, or even not showing any information at all. Thankfully, this was fixed in the latest firmware 15.24, which is actually another complaint, because this firmware is out for a while, but it is not on the JK BMS website. There is still the 15.23 version available, but not the 2.4. I have already uploaded this to my Google Drive, link is down below. And thankfully this bug with the LCD display was solved with the newest firmware version 15.24 for the version 15 BMS. I haven't heard about any issues with the version 14 of the BMS and the larger display, so let me know in the comments down below if there are issues as well. But version 15 definitely fixed. Well, and then, yeah, well, this was supposed to be a feature the community found out if people forgot the password to log into the JK BMS to be able to change parameters and settings. So someone found out about the algorithm and programmed a code generator. So you can just make a temporary password, log into the BMS and change all the parameters as you need them. And here as well we have quite a few requests under videos and also via email how to reset the password of the BMS if you have forgotten the password. Well, you can't. But with this code generator, you can generate a temporary password which you can use to log in and change all your settings and parameters. While this is a great feature for people who have forgotten the password, it also opens a huge exploit and a backdoor for this JK BMS. It is a major safety concern, because everyone with the JK app and this code generator can now log into any of the JK BMSs. Needs to be in Bluetooth range, of course, but still can log in and can change parameters to potentially dangerous values. See, when I made this video a couple of weeks ago, I didn't really think about the safety issue of that. I was more like happy that we have a solution to actually log into this BMS now, because people constantly forget their passwords. But then I read all the comments under this video and I said, well, of course I didn't think about this at all. This is a safety concern. This is a huge issue. And JK hasn't addressed this at all, have they? And the problem here really is the Bluetooth functionality for all their BMSs, right? It is always sending this Bluetooth signal, and if you have the app, you can at least log in, read all the parameters, but with this exploit, with this code generator, you can also log in now and change the parameters, which is not great. And one of you guys had actually a great idea, because all these BMSs, they now have a power button, right? And if you double click the power button, for example, it could toggle the Bluetooth functionality. Yeah, could turn it off, double click, turn it back on, double click, turn it back off. That is a great idea, because otherwise they would need to change the hardware with a mechanical switch somewhere to turn off the Bluetooth module. But maybe that is possible with a firmware upgrade, and they use a double click on the power button. So that was a fantastic idea. Yeah guys, and I really don't want to make this video too long here. There is of course a lot more issues with the JK BMS, but as you could also see from this list now, most of the issues, if not all, they're all fixable with a new firmware, with a new software. Honestly, the communication to JK is not as great anymore as it was before. We had our really good time when the JK Inverter BMS came out, and we had this massive complaint. Lots of things didn't work, and they pulled together these engineers and put them all in a group, and I could communicate directly to them. But now all these engineers have all left. There's nobody in this group anymore apart from me. So I have no one to talk to at JK BMS anymore. Of course I have still contacts, but these are not the people who can fix the firmware and the software. We had this really good relationship with the JK engineers, and I told them about an issue, and half an hour or an hour later I had a new firmware to test and it was fixed. And then they officially released this firmware for the public. That's why we had so many updates coming back in the day. But this work relationship is not there anymore. So if I report something to JK BMS, I never hear back from them again. Yeah, I've already reported some of these issues to them. Silence. Like with so many other Chinese products we are seeing, I've got the impression here we are 90%, maybe even 95% there to make a really, really good BMS. But now they have pulled all the engineers and all the tech staff away from this project to start something new. Even the existing one here is not ready yet. There's still some work to do, and I really don't understand why they are doing this. They've got a really good hardware, they've got a really good software already. They just need to keep working on this software and make it perfect. They would sell hundreds of thousands of these BMSs. Probably they already do and don't care about this fine-tuning anymore now. So as you have already experienced yourself, there is a lack of communication with JK. The JK BMS was always at the top of my list of all BMSs out there. But they need to keep working on it to keep it there, because otherwise other companies are catching up. And quite frankly, I have contact to another company, well-known company, and they have offered to send me one of their BMSs. It is a very similar BMS to the JK Inverter BMS. Maybe the software has not all the features the JK BMS has, but here again, it is just software. Maybe their engineering team is willing to take their software a step further and finalize it. Listen to the request of the community, provide good customer service. So I don't know, maybe it's time to move on from JK to something else. So how about a 300 amp inverter BMS with a 3 amp active balancer on board? So as you can see, other companies are not sleeping, yeah? They are developing their products as well. And if JK is not up to the job anymore and thinks 90% achievement is alright, well, it's maybe time to move on to something else. Guys, as always, leave all your comments down below, leave all your issues with the JK Inverter BMS under this video here. I will forward this link to JK and say, look, this is all the issues people have. You need to be on the ball, you need to develop the software, the firmware, need to actively engage with your community, with your customers, reply to them, respond to them, help them if they have issues. And I'm more than happy to help JK as well, spending all my time here in the garage and testing their alpha, beta firmwares, report back to them to make the software and the product better. Perfect. We are so close, but we need to keep working on it. But I don't know, guys, I don't know. And today we are saying hello to 76. We are saying hello to 91,647 subscribers. Guys, thank you so much for all your support here on the channel. There are some beautiful people who are actually buying me a beer from time to time. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for all your comments, all your help with the JK BMS and all the other products we are testing here on the channel from time to time. I'm trying to collate all your feedback and push this back to the manufacturer and say, look, these are all the issues here. Make your products better. Make them better. They're already good. Sometimes they are not, but most of the time they are pretty good. good, but make them better. And you will sell even more, because we want good products, we want the perfect products, they want to sell more, so it's a win-win situation then. And I'm very grateful to have such a helpful community here on this channel, and as a whole we can actually have an influence on these manufacturers in China. And we had quite a few success stories here on the channel with the Knee Active Balancer and the JK BMS lately. So together we can make it work. As always guys, thank you so much for watching, thanks for all your amazing support here. Welcome to all these new subscribers here. Welcome to all the new members of the channel as well. Sometimes I release some extra videos for just these members, and they are just supporting me on a regular basis, so thank you very much for that. And guys, until the next video when we do something completely different, I don't want to do the JK BMS anymore at the moment. Until then guys, you stay charged, stay safe, and thanks so much for watching. See you then, bye bye.